Marisha here, and today I'm going to share with you some of my thoughts as an American on Halloween in the UK. And I will start by saying that I think the average American would be disappointed by Halloween over here. Although it has gained in popularity over the past generation, it is still not nearly as popular over here as it is in the States. Only about 28% of Britons celebrate Halloween, whereas the figure that I found online says 70% of Americans celebrate Halloween. That feels like a low ball to me. I would guess it's closer to 80%. It is the second biggest holiday in the States. It's a $9 billion industry. And certainly, if you're out and about on October 31st, you know that it's Halloween because lots of places are decorated for it. Lots of people are wearing costumes, not just children, but adults, and adults at their workplace. If you go to a restaurant, a grocery store, the library, the bank, the post office, you would not be surprised to find employees at any of those establishments wearing costumes on Halloween. It's just so normal in the States. And that is not the case over here. I walked around central London on Halloween, a few different places around London throughout the day, didn't see anybody in a costume. The only time I saw people in costumes was when I volunteered at my church's Bright Party, which is like an anti Halloween party. They will go out of their way to say it's not anti Halloween because it happens early enough that people can take their kids trick or treating afterwards. But like, it's basically an anti Halloween party. So I did see kids in costumes there because they were going to go trick or treating afterwards. But other than that, nothing, nothing. And so it's kind of depressing if you're someone who likes Halloween like I do. I tried to get people to dress up in costume with me and go do something on Halloween. Could not get anybody. I tried to get people on my trivia team to wear costumes for the Tuesday before Halloween. Halloween was on a Thursday this year. And the best I could do is one person wore a witch hat, just a hat, nothing else. And one person wore a t-shirt with a ghost on it holding like a mug of beer. And that was it. The other people didn't dress in anything. So I didn't even wear a whole costume. I just wore a headband with bat wings because Halloween really is sort of like a communal thing, at least in the States, right? So I'm going to talk about a couple of reasons why I think it's not as popular over here. And then I'm actually kind of going to get into some of the religious aspect because um, that is a factor for me in both places. So, to start with, one of the main reasons why I think Halloween is not as popular over here is its proximity to Guy Fawkes Night. So, Guy Fawkes Night or Bonfire Night is November 5th. So, it's not even, a week between the two holidays. And I think, Guy Fawkes obviously dates back to the 1600s with the gunpowder plot, and it's very, very popular here. And that's actually, if you didn't know this, where we get the term guy, the way that we use guy to mean like any like dude. It comes from the tradition of children going around and asking for a penny for the guy. Anyway, just a little side trivia fun for you. So that's a much bigger holiday over here, and I think most people's idea is that the two are sort of in competition because they are so close to each other on the calendar. And so, Americans wouldn't think of it that way. We would just celebrate both. But I think for most Brits, it's sort of like well, no, we're already going to do bonfire night. And especially when you're talking about a year like this year, right, where Halloween is on a Thursday and Guy Fawkes Night is on, I think, a Tuesday. And so you have that weekend in between when, this is true in the States too. Often it's the weekend that is closest to a holiday where you do a lot of the celebrations. So it's like, okay, are we celebrating Halloween this weekend or are we celebrating Guy Fawkes this weekend? And, Guy Fawkes is going to win out because it has this like long history here. So I think that's the number one reason, but there are a couple of other reasons. One is that it is Halloween is viewed as an American holiday, which might feel kind of strange if you know the origins of Halloween, right? That it originated in the British Isles with the Celtic peoples is as the holiday of Samhain. But certainly the way that Halloween is celebrated now, it is seen as a largely American holiday, and there are people who kind of push back against it for that reason. They don't like the idea of, American culture sort of seeping into British culture and ruining it. Um, one of my friends told me like her dad doesn't like Halloween because it's American. And then there are other people who won't say that they don't like it because it's American, but they'll say they don't like it because it's like over commercialized and it's just you're just spending money on like dumb stuff. And I think that, when you think about like capitalism run amok and like the over commercialization of things, I do think of America. So I think you can probably lump those two things together as a sort of like a similar reason why people haven't embraced the holiday over here that the way that they have in the States. But there is also, and this was surprising to me, a religious kind of pushback against the holiday, which I did not expect. We, of course, in talking to my American audience, we, of course, know that there are Americans who are anti Halloween, right? But they are viewed as kind of a fringe element, right? They are the extremist evangelical sects that think that Dungeons and Dragons is satanic and rock and roll music is satanic, and if you play the lyrics backwards it says bow down to the devil. And they'll tell you that you can't drink alcohol and you can't play cards and you can't dance, and just all they'll burn books and tell you you can't read Harry Potter or whatever. They're just basically huge buzzkills who like to add rules to life that aren't even biblical, right? They are a minority, and the majority of not just Americans, all Americans, but even the majority of Christians in America celebrate Halloween because we view it as a sort of communal and wholesome and child centered holiday. Yes, we know the history of the holiday, right? We know about Samhain, and we know that there can be sort of darker elements to it. We know that there are some people on Halloween who do gravitate toward a dark side of it. We know, like, if we own a black cat, that we need to make sure that it's inside because there are sickos out there who will like kill black cats on Halloween. But we also know that that is like, again, like fringe, very rare instances, and that the vast majority of Americans, to celebrate Halloween means to be involved in trick or treating, either as a child trick or treating, as a parent taking your child trick or treating, or as someone who is handing out candy to trick or treaters. And that really is a very wholesome activity. It is, for some people, it is the only time that they're going to have contact with their neighbor. So in that sense, it's sort of like a last vestige of community. It is an exercise in hospitality. You're opening your door up and welcoming all of these strangers, right? Because it's not just the kids from your street. You'll get kids from other neighborhoods. You don't necessarily know who they are. It doesn't matter, right? They're kids, and you are being hospitable and you are being gracious and giving them, candy. And on the other side of it, the kids are taught a particular etiquette for trick or treating, right? If you get a kid who doesn't say thank you after you give them their treat, like that is an anomaly, right? It is pretty much a given that that kid is going to say thank you, that they're taught that. I remember when I was a kid, I was taught all of the etiquette. It wasn't just that you say thank you. It was you don't even walk across their lawn. You make sure that you walk up their driveway or up their sidewalk to get to their house, right? And then, trick or treat, thank you, and then move on to the next house, right? There's this whole etiquette that children are taught. Um, this, kind of appreciativeness of it, right? Halloween very much in the minds of most Americans is, a 4-year-old in a ladybug costume toddling up to your door saying twinkle or tweet, and then you give them like a little bag of Skittles and fuss over their costume. Oh, what a cute little ladybug you are. And then they go off, and then for 2 hours you are having that interaction with kids and, fussing over their costumes and whatever. Very, very wholesome. And then the second most popular activity after trick-or-treating is carving pumpkins. Again, this is like such a fun, creative thing to do. Usually it's done in the context of a family is sitting around together, carving their pumpkins together. What are you going to do this year for your pumpkin? Roasting the seeds, which are actually really good for you. Pumpkin seeds are a good source of zinc. Um, and then, putting them on display, and that's another thing when people are out and about and they like to see people's pumpkins lit up on display and kind of look at the different ideas that people have and creative ways that they are designing their pumpkins. Again, just super wholesome. There are people who are still doing like bobbing for apples, and so the vast majority of Halloween activities tend to be sort of family centered or community centered and really just sort of wholesome. And even I would say most adults who celebrate Halloween and have like Halloween parties, it really is about creativity in trying to come up with a costume that's like really clever or makes a good use of like things you have around the house. A lot of times people are trying to make costumes out of, the cheapest materials they can find, things they can find around the house. So it's an exercise not just in creativity, but also in resourcefulness. And yeah, I'm sure, there are adult parties where people, get drunk or might even do harder drugs or stuff. But I think that at least in my circles, and not just like with church people, but also like my non-church friends, it really was more like we're just going to get together and have costumes, and we're going to have snacks, and we're going to play games. We might do like a murder mystery night, or play some board games or whatever. But it's just a chance for people to kind of get together. And even when you're not doing a specific activity, just on the day itself, like I said, when you're out and about and you're just seeing other adults in costumes, it is sort of this, it does give you the sense of community of like, yeah, this is the one time of year we can all be kind of kids again, and we can be creative and imaginative and, participate in this thing that is, yeah, just like kind of everybody sort of is in on, and it again largely a wholesome thing. Um, and so that is a very American view of Halloween, I've discovered. Like that's not how it's viewed over here because it's not popular. It has not gotten into the culture to that extent, so that Christians over here focus more on the like darker aspects of Halloween, because like when they're thinking of Halloween, they're thinking of like Halloween the movie, and they're thinking like, oh, it celebrates, like serial killers, and it's, yeah, obviously people are dressing up as like witches and all these sort of nasty monsters. And my friend from church shared, we've had this conversation for a couple of years now. We had it last year for Halloween and this year as well. And she shared with me this like meme that she saw online of a Christian over here who was posting about Halloween. And she was like, yeah, I want to hear what you think of it. She's like, I know you're not going to agree with it, but like tell me what you think, right? And I'm reading it, and it reads like something that someone in the extreme camp of America would say. And, you know, I always thought that that was sort of like a uniquely American thing, right? We think of Europe as being like a post Christian sort of secular place where people would be pretty chill about Halloween. So to see so much pushback against it from a religious perspective over here was really surprising to me. And so reading this thing from like a British Christian that was like this diatribe against Halloween and how it like um how dark it is and how it makes it seem like evil prevails And like basically all of the arguments that it was making were the opposite of arguments that I would make about Halloween. Which is what I said to my friend. I was like, yeah, I do disagree with it. I disagree. Like every single point is like basically the opposite of what I would say about Halloween. Like Halloween does not like celebrate evil. It does not act like evil like triumphs and that we have no like uh power over it. The exact opposite. First of all, Halloween I think is great because it acknowledges evil. I think that our society has gotten to the point where we too often do not acknowledge evil. We so desperately want to pretend that like everybody's basically a good person and that, you know, if someone is bad, they're not really bad, they're just misunderstood or they just have some like unaddressed trauma or, you know, if they just got some therapy, if they just were put in a community where they were shown love and where, you know, they could be rehabilitated, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying that like there aren't instances where people can be rehabilitated, but I think that we have started to err on the side of not acknowledging evil and we need to say that nope, there are forces in the world that are against us, right? There are psychopaths and sociopaths, there are serial killers and murderers and rapists and child molesters, there are people who are predatory. And Halloween, even though we are using monsters like vampires and werewolves and witches and ghosts and whatever to serve as archetypes, to serve as symbols of the real life monsters that do exist, of humans who are predatory. I think that Halloween can be actually a really good thing in the sense that it does address that evil exists and acknowledges that evil exists. And then also from a Christian perspective, I would say that because Halloween does sort of through the use of costumes and things almost poke fun at that evil or mock that evil because ultimately that evil has no power over us, right? I don't think that Halloween, this person was arguing that Halloween is like talks about how evil is like all powerful and we don't have power over it. I think exactly the opposite. Halloween is about how evil does not have power over us because Christ has triumphed over the grave and Christ has triumphed over evil. And so, as Christians, we really do have nothing to fear ultimately, right? Um, and Halloween, I think, can be a good reminder of that. And also just in general, I think it's a good memento mori. I think the way that we sort of celebrate the macabre with Halloween is a healthy thing because I would also argue we do not have a healthy view of death, right? We are a society that's obsessed with youth and anti aging, right? And wants and longs for immortality. We do not have a healthy view of death. And Halloween is one of the few times of the year where a healthy view of death starts to appear, right? You have this acknowledgement of the macabre, of death. Like this is something that is going to happen and it is a part of the life cycle and we need to embrace it. And again, as Christians, understand that we have nothing to fear in death because Christ has triumphed over the grave. So as a Christian, that is part of like my view of Halloween, if you want to take it to like a theological level. Now, what I would say is I think that the vast majority of people are not thinking about it in those terms. It really is just like a fun thing. Like, I mean, you don't need to overthink it. My parents are like super religious. I grew up in a very religious, very strict household, but they were not the sort of religious that was anti-Halloween because they understood that they could put their child in a skunk costume and take her around the neighborhood for candy and it would not be spiritually damaging to me. And that's again how most Americans view Halloween. But again, not the case in the UK. And I think that's because of, yeah, kind of the history of the holiday, right? Again, it did start over here. So how did it get to a point where it was so popular in the US and it became what it is in the US, which is like the sort of very child family oriented thing, but that didn't happen over here? And the answer is Irish. Like Halloween is popular in America because of Irish immigration from during like the potato famine, right? Because it does come from the Celtic holiday of Samhain, and it was largely celebrated in Ireland, but also in Wales and Scotland. And so that is that influence. And then, of course, obviously, when it came to America, there were a few changes and it just sort of morphed over there. But it didn't happen over here because, and this is me speculating a little bit, the historical English attitude toward the Celtic peoples of the British Isles, right? You have this long storied history of the English trying to just squelch Celtic peoples, from trying to eradicate the Welsh language to banning the kilt in Scotland to all of the atrocities that they committed against the Irish. And I don't think that you can completely divorce yourself from your nation's history. um, I don't think that there are a lot of English people who are consciously saying to themselves, yeah, Halloween has its roots in like Irish Celtic culture and I hate those bloody mix and so I'm not going to celebrate it. I don't think that that's the case, but I think that on a subconscious level, there is sort of like this thread from that history among the like societally the English that may be contributing to that. And certainly when you pull in the factor of religion and how when Samhain was sort of uh, co-opted by the church, right? That was the Catholic Church. That's all there was at the time. And it's All Hallows Eve. It's this Catholic holiday. And so when you get to the point in English history where you have the Reformation and you have very anti-Catholic attitudes and actually persecution of Catholics, I think Halloween was one of the things that ended up sort of being a target of that because it was seen as All Hallows Eve was seen as a Catholic holiday. And especially when you get the Puritan influence of, the Puritans who were here before they popped across the Atlantic to the US and became the ancestors of the people in the US who are very anti Halloween. That all of course is speculation on my part. I'm not like a expert on the cultural history of Halloween in, all of around the world in different countries and stuff. But I really would not be surprised if you could find a little bit of that at play in the attitudes toward it. All that to say that you can find Halloween things over here. I did carve a pumpkin and roast the seeds. I did put up a few decorations in my room. But for the most part, as an American, you're going to find it really disappointing. Halloween is kind of a downer over here. Um, and, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. It's fine. I would say that more than any other holiday, Halloween is the one that I found to be the most, I guess, problematic in terms of culture shock between the two countries because, obviously I don't expect them to celebrate 4th of July over here. Also, for me personally, that's a holiday that I don't care about anyway. And I don't expect them to celebrate Thanksgiving over here because I know that that is a uniquely American holiday. But I did expect them to celebrate Halloween because it originated over here. Like it originated in the British Isles. So I guess I thought that there would be a bit more of it than there is. And so I think that's one of the things that was a bit more of a culture shock. And this has been my third Halloween, and I still haven't been able to find people that I could convince to wear like full costumes with me and go do something, anything for Halloween. Maybe next year. Um, but just to follow up, I don't want this to sound like it's like super negative. Even though I definitely felt really negative this week, it was actually because I love Halloween. I mean, I'm very American in my love of Halloween. And so not being able to celebrate it the way that would have liked was definitely a downer. But to end on something that is maybe more hopeful is to say that, now that Halloween is over, we're getting into November and we're heading into Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving, of course, like I said, is an American holiday that you don't expect people here to celebrate. But what I have found over here is that there is an interest in Thanksgiving. Um, and Thanksgiving is a holiday that lends itself better than Halloween to kind of sharing it with people and being able to celebrate it the way that you normally would, because normally it's okay, you make a meal and you have it with your friends and family, right? So you can do that anywhere. And I did that here last year. My church actually asked me to help make a Thanksgiving dinner, and I gave a presentation on the history of the holiday and taught them about, American Thanksgiving. And it was a lot of fun. And so that's something that's kind of easy to do no matter where you are in the world, because you can always just kind of put something together as the Thanksgiving dinner and have a few friends over. And I think most people are amenable to talking about being thankful for things, right? There's not, I think, much pushback on that concept. And also, America's not the only country that has Thanksgiving. It's helpful that Canada has Thanksgiving as well. And, because they're part of the Commonwealth, I think there's also a little bit more of a acceptance of the idea of having a Thanksgiving Day over here. And then in December you hit Christmas, and honestly, when you take family out of the equation, because obviously my family are in the States and I'm excited to see them this Christmas. But when you take family out of the equation, Christmas is actually better over here than in the States. London is really a magical place for Christmas. And so, when you're talking about holidays and you're talking about living abroad, it really is kind of you win some, you lose some. You're gonna have to, there's some trade-offs. So even though if you come over here, you'll be disappointed by Halloween, I think that you would definitely enjoy Christmas. Like, subscribe, tell your friends how gnarly this channel is, and I'll see you next time.